Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 6, Episode 15, Honor Among Thieves. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us and give us your thoughts on the episodes and our takes on them, of course, and anything else that is Star Trek related. Now, before we dive into the 139th episode of Deep Space Nine, we, of course, like to do our weekly check ins, and I feel like it's been a little bit. Don't know why, because when we were just here last week. But anyway, David, take it away. How has your week been?
Week's been good. Work is definitely better than it was than the previous 2 weeks, but it was weird because on Wednesday, or was it? No, I guess it was Thursday morning. My computer at work wouldn't turn back on. I had to restart it because it seemed to have a problem, and I had restarted it multiple times before, and this time it was finally like, nope, not anymore. And my secondary backup computer at work was also not turning on, which was bizarre. It's like there's one computer going out, but both of them going out. That's just strange. So for several days at work, I was having to twiddle my thumbs, and we had to call my coworkers to write up any receipts that were going to be made. But it worked out. It was fine. Um, and read The Expanse, Book 7, Persepolis
That fast.
Rising.
That fast. See what I'm saying, folks? I mean, he just kind of ruins things sometimes.
Hey, I started the week before. Come on now.
I'm very much a slow burn, and then this guy just burns through, period. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, like the reason I enjoy the job as long as I have is in part because I have free time to read stuff. So, um, but yeah, so did that. Just got home today from visiting my brother and his wife and the two girls. Cute. The 3-year-old is at that age where she can talk full sentences. She is understandable. She is lively. Um, still a 3-year-old, but all of that audaciousness of a 3-year-old. And
Mhm.
the older one is 6, almost 7 here soon. And she got a little award at school, straight A's so far. So she had a little award that she got this past week, which was fun. So good to see them. And yeah, I guess that's me. How about you?
Well, as I alluded to last week, I had an injury on my foot that I finally got taken care of. I had been working out the previous week, and I ended up stepping on something that was embedded in my foot, and it took just about a week before I was finally able to get that seen to and taken care of. So
Right.
then, of course, I've been on the mend for the past week for that because it's your feet. You got to take care
Right.
of your feet. But got that all taken care of. So now I'm looking forward to this week because I'm going to be able to be back at it again. I feel like I've been doing this a lot, kind of start stop for one thing or another. So I'm trying to really get on a good track because I've set some goals in place for myself in the upcoming year that I really want to be able to hit, and that means being consistent with workouts. So
Right.
hopefully this is my last delay of any kind. Other than that, I was, I guess, kind of working my way through this thing that I do every so often, where you kind of just take stock of shows that have ran for a really long time, but for whatever reason you either didn't pay a lot of attention to, or never watched, or in some cases you never even heard of. And so I was kind of making my way through that, and of course this led me to kind of cycling back through ER, and I feel like I'm seeing episodes for the first time. I don't know what was going on for me the first time I watched it, but some of them I've never seen. Other ones, it's like I remember them and I really dislike them. So it's
Right.
hard to kind of watch them again and then go, oh, I don't have to, and I just skip it. But a show that has been getting my attention the most lately, as a new, at least new to me show, is Blue Buds, and it's an ongoing show. Right now, Hulu has, I think, 9 seasons. I don't know how many seasons the
Wow.
show has, but I know Hulu has at least 9 of the seasons of the show. I had planned on checking that out. I think it's actually available on Paramount Plus. So I'm going to go back and check there as well. Um, And speaking of Paramount Plus and other shows, I started NCIS, which is another show that it's got 20 something, 21, 22 seasons. This is like that's a major chunk of my life, and I never knew about this show. But the reason why I started watching that one is because apparently they have a new spin-off called NCIS Origins, which tells the origin story of one of the main characters of NCIS, Leroy Jethro Gibbs. So if you're familiar with the show at all, then you might want to check this out. One thing, like, it was interesting because I was watching the original NCIS, and then I watched the NCIS Origins, the new show, 'cause they've got 2 episodes out right now that you can watch.
Uh-huh.
And so it's set in 1991, which is right in my wheelhouse, right? Because, but it's so interesting to watch because it's like, um, so much of the stuff that they're doing, it makes you feel like it's current because it was the 90s, and it's so interesting to see how much, like, when you're framing a show that's clearly filmed today in a, I guess, retro setting, how
Right.
many things they really have to, like, nail and get right in order to, sell that story. And I've found that very interesting. It's more interesting almost than watching a show that was originally filmed during that time and set in that contemporary era. And for that, my reference to that is going to be ER. ER was a show made in the 90s for the 90s. They make references to the 90s. All the stuff is there, right? So we're not having to deal with a show that's basically a large flashback. But this one it's so different. And I would just say, even if you're not necessarily a fan of NCIS, I would say go watch it just for those elements, and you can see how much the world has changed from then to now because
Right.
there's so many things they have to, like, get right, and go over, and, like, the cell phone usage when only a couple people had cell phones in general, and the computers. That was the funniest part when the guy was like, we just got this bad boy shipped down from wherever, and it's one of those old school, just big blocky monitor things, and you start it up and it's got that high pitched whine and across the screen and everything. And what museum did y'all break that thing at? But it's like stuff like that is just it's great, just to see how things have tracked and changed. So I really have been enjoying that. Another thing that I did was, as I've mentioned before, I've been playing the Star Trek Online game. I completed all the missions, so now I'm like sad now because I have nothing to do. I've done everything, which I never thought would happen because, one, they were releasing stuff at a pretty regular interval, and two, I was fairly new to the game. Like, I had played it years ago
Right.
and, just kinda lost track of my original, subscription to the
Right.
game, and so I had to start all over and, was working my way through things, and everything that they have available for you in the storyline of the game, I've completed. Now, I know
Gotcha.
that things have, like, come and gone. There's a bunch of little, like, side missions and stuff that you can do, and everything is replayable, but I'm saying I've completed all of those things. So, yeah, I've just been, like, on this mission to, like, knock stuff out, and, I've decided to do, like, actor viewing days. So I'm gonna do a Clint Eastwood movie day. I'm gonna do a Philip Seymour Hoffman movie day. I'm gonna do a Harrison Ford movie day. All of these because I enjoy so much of their stuff from the '90s and
Right.
beyond, and I just want to, like, do this, like, massive comparison of these really, like, hotshot actors and stuff that at least come to my mind right away of people who are, prolific actors. They've
Right.
had to have been in 75 plus movies, and all the actors I just named have all got at least 100 movie credits to their name, if not more. So, I mean, Clint Eastwood alone, he's like his own library. The man's
Yeah.
done so many.
Man's
So,
been shooting films since our parents were kids.
oh
So
yeah. Yeah, I watched The Outlaw Josie Wales yesterday, and it's considered one of, like, the best of the westerns. And so I was trying to watch it and see why they thought it was the best. And I'm sorry, don't see it. I don't think so. I was thinking of another one that I had seen, and I'm gonna watch that one again just to be sure. But Pale Rider comes to mind for me as the better of, if I'm comparing them, Josie Wales versus Pale Rider. Pale Rider wins for me. So I'm going to watch that one again soon. And I've got like a slew of others I'm going to. So, if you're interested at all, go watch them. And I would love to, like, well, I may briefly bring them up and we
Right.
can just briefly talk about them. That's not going to be like the full show, but I would love to hear other people's takes on some of these films as we go through them as well.
Right.
Yeah. But we're not here to talk about all of that. We are here to talk about Honor Among Thieves. And just an unusual episode, to say the least, in Trek. You would be forgiven for not recognizing this as a Star Trek episode. The setting is different, the characterization, even the people that we know, like O'Brien, is completely different. Just a lot of things in here that we've really never seen
Yeah.
in Deep Space Nine, and it's nice to kind of break away from the world that we know to get into something else. So, with that being said, David, would you like to give our recap for this one? I did last week for sure. I know that.
I can do this one. Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay, guys. So this one is Honor Among Thieves, and as Perry just mentioned, it's going to be heavily focused on O'Brien. I'll quickly just say that before we get into the main storyline, there is a brief scene early on where everyone on the station is complaining that O'Brien is gone. The turbo lifts don't work quite right, and Quark and Odo both come to Kira to complain about something, and they both talk over each other. And basically, the station seems to be kind of falling apart without our fix-it man, O'Brien, there to make sure everything is working properly. Um, and no one else is able to do what he does of keeping Cardassian and Federation technology working in sync together. But the rest of the episode is all about O'Brien. No one else, the main cast, reappears outside of that little one scene. So the main plot is that O'Brien has been sent to infiltrate the Orion Syndicate at a planet called Furious Prime. And the reason for this is that Starfleet intelligence has a mole that has leaked all of the identities of their undercover officers to the Syndicate. And because the Syndicate needs a man with O'Brien's skills, they think that O'Brien could act as a infiltrator and find out who the leak was from. So on for Farius Prime, he ends up infiltrating a group led by Bilby, who works for the Syndicate as a local operator. He has two subordinates that we also meet. One of them is a I forget what alien type he is, but he's not a human. But he tries hacking into a computer while O'Brien is nearby, and O'Brien's able to subtly sabotage the this hacking so that he damages this other guy's equipment so that he can then fix it and get himself in with the group. And so he does that, and as he calls himself Connolly, and as he does that, that means that he gets another opportunity to prove himself to Bilby, the leader of this local syndicate group, as to fix three Klingon-made disruptors that are broken. O'Brien, using his contact in the Federation, gets the coils necessary from the Klingon ambassador on the planet Farius Prime, and he fixes them overnight. And when Bilby has his supplier show up to explain why he sold him faulty equipment, the guy is belligerent, saying, "Oh, I sold you stuff that works." And Bilby says, if you're so sure of that, then you won't mind basically if I shoot you with this gun." And the guy seems to not be too upset about it until Bilby shoots him and ultimately kills him with the weapon that O'Brien fixed. So O'Brien obviously is a little upset about that, but as he gets to know Bilby, he actually kind of comes to like the guy. He keeps talking about needing a family. Bilby apparently sends all of his extra money to his wife and children, which are on a different planet. He is someone who has a gambling like watch the races, and takes O'Brien to go see that. So O'Brien starts to relate to Bilby and comes to like him on some level. And he is told by his contact the Federation that they're just trying to find the identity of the leak and put together a case against Bilby, so he'll go to prison. But in the process of O'Brien figuring out who the leak is, he does figure out who the leak is. Bilby gets wordy and gives away that O'Brien. Uh, Bilby's boss Ramus shows up with a Vorta, and the Vorta is there. He questions Ramus, the boss, questions O'Brien, who is this guy? Never seen him before. So Bilby witnesses for O'Brien, which basically says, if there's anything wrong with O'Brien, you can kill both of us together. Like I, I, I witness for his trustworthiness,
I
and
vouch for him,
I
basically.
vouched for him. That's the right word. Yep. And so we find out there's a Vorta that is now going to work with the syndicate, and we later find out what the Vorta wants Bilby to do is assassinate the same Klingon diplomat that provided the coils for that mission that Miles just did of fixing the disruptors. So the very disruptors that O'Brien fixed, they want Bilby to use those to kill the ambassador, and use that because this ambassador is a isolationist. They want to kill him as a martyr sort of situation, so that Gowron, the Klingon chancellor, the High Chancellor, will be made to look like he assassinated one of his own and force them to pull back, separating the Federation and the Klingons, and allow the Dominion to focus solely on the Federation. When O'Brien learns that the Federation contact he's been working with wants Bilby to go ahead and go with the mission so that the Klingons who have been warned can capture or kill Bilby and disrupt this plan without giving away O'Brien or anyone else's involvement in what's going on with the syndicate. O'Brien, instead of being allowed to be extracted, uh, decides to instead attack his Federation contact, knocks him out, and tries to warn Bilby about the fact that he is working for the Federation and this is a trap for Bilby. But Bilby says he has no choice. The syndicate doesn't allow for him to fail. If he dies, that's better than trying to escape and his family being punished for his disobedience and going against the syndicate. And so Bilby walks off to his certain doom, leaving his cat for O'Brien to care for. And so O'Brien in the last scene is talking with Bashir, talking about how he regrets the fact that this man trusted him, but O'Brien is effectively the cause of his death. And he's now taking care of the cat. So, yeah, that's basically the episode. There
Yeah,
you go.
I mean, that's pretty much the highlights there. So, as always, first question out the gate, Mr. First Time Viewer, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, so because it's an O'Brien only episode and everyone else only has one scene with the one exception of Bashir at the very end, it is totally an O'Brien episode. And we get the moments where, um, you know, Bilby tells him, like, you need to have a family. And at one point, O'Brien tries to say, oh, I have a girlfriend, because Bilby has picked up a prostitute for O'Brien to enjoy as a thanks for being my friend. And O'Brien has to be like, oh, but I have a girlfriend, and gives the girl some money to send her on her way. And he uses Keiko's name and says, oh, I just got into a relationship. And Bilby is all excited. He's like, oh, it's all about family. It's great. And at the end, O'Brien says, I do have a family. This is an interesting episode because it's not a typical episode. We're not
No,
getting
it is
um
definitely not.
we're not getting the whole cast together and them, being put into a box and solving a situation with some technobabble, or technobabble, as I should say. They're not, up against a wall and then squeeze their way out. In fact, it doesn't end well in some ways. O'Brien punches the Federation contact he has. The Federation contact guy comes off as like, I don't care at the end, which is not a good look. And then O'Brien is not able to save his contact. He's not able to
Mhm.
save the guy. Um, Bilby goes to his death. So it kind of ends on a really low note. It ends in a depressing place, which is also weird because one of the first things Bilby does in front of O'Brien is kill a guy with the very disruptors that Bilby had asked O'Brien to fix. So when O'Brien gets all touchy feely at the end about the guy, I just thought he was going to go to prison. It's like, dude, I understand. Like, you made a contact with the guy, you had to become friends with him. Like he's come to express a lot of trust in you, but you saw him kill a guy in cold blood. Like,
Yeah,
this warm feeling you have seems a little bit it's out of place in general, and it's certainly out of place because you witnessed that firsthand. You didn't even like try and stop him in that scene. You
yeah,
didn't make any move of like, oh, that was unnecessary, or I don't want to ever be around that again. Like, I was in the like I was watching that scene. I was like, if I was O'Brien, I might like have the character be like, I'll never be a part of that kind of thing again. Like, I might, supply things to you, but I don't want to be a part of this stuff. I'm not here to. I know that might happen, but I don't want to be a part of it. He doesn't even say that. He doesn't object. He's just there for it. Um, so it's an interesting episode. I like the idea of it's a very typical spy plot of, oh, the list of our spies got out. I mean, that trope in the spy genre is so cliche to the
yeah,
point of being a bit much. I mean, the first Mission Impossible movie did that, and this was also the 90s when Mission Impossible did it. So hey, we're all doing the same plot around the same time. But I feel like I've heard that plot before.
yeah.
So to bring in O'Brien, you're not on the list. Well, that's also the next plot in the. Who's the new guy to the spy movie? Who's the guy who's have to learn the ropes and learn how to spy? And like, I think there's a movie coming out like this year that's going to be part of the plot, and I don't even remember. I just know that who played Storm in the X-Men movies? Halle Berry. Halle Berry is it's Mark Wahlberg. That's who it is. Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry
Oh,
were
it's more like
on.
that's more like a comedy though.
Well, but it's the same
Um,
idea
but
that
yeah, yeah, but you're
he's
right.
not on the list. He has to learn the ropes.
It's a recurrent. You're right. It is a very recurring theme in these type of movies that the spy list has gotten out,
Right.
and it just makes me. And every time I see it, I always have the same thought. It's just like, what kind of spy agency keeps a list that someone
Yeah.
can just copy down? I mean, like
Yeah.
if it's that
Exactly.
important, you should have some kind of other way of
Like,
encrypting and
why are they all on the
protecting.
same list? Like,
Yeah,
each
they're all on the same
individual.
list, and it's like they're full on like legit names and addresses and everything. Like,
Yes.
you know that they're operating under aliases, so at least keep the aliases. Don't give out the real. Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand. I never understood that, and it's. I
Yeah.
mean, I know that it's been a plot of a James Bond movie.
Yep.
I know there are several other movies that done. I know Mission Impossible's done it, like you said. Several
They've done
TV
like.
shows
Yeah.
have done it. I mean, there's so many. If they get this list, it's over. Well, then it should just be over. If you were stupid enough to put your name on a list, then sorry, you're out.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Um, I agree with you with what you're saying. Like this that the emotional connection that O'Brien is supposed to have, and we as the audience, and taking O'Brien's viewpoint, we're supposed to have, it does fall a bit flat. And I think that that's because, as I have found out in doing some, behind the scenes research for this episode, they had actually intended a different actor to play the role of Bilby. It was supposed to be a much older man, and the goal there was to have more of a father son dynamic between that other person and O'Brien.
Right.
Unfortunately, the actor that they had originally slated to play that part died a few days
Mm.
before they could do the principal shooting, so they recast, and
Wow.
this became more about having a friendship. I think that what they really should have done, since the goal was a father son relationship, um, they either A should have found another actor who could play that part, or B made it a more of a brothers. Like, make us think that these two men could be brothers in
Right.
another, in
Right.
another life. And you just have one who landed on the wrong side of the tracks and is always trying to make good, but just can't seem to get there.
Right.
Whereas you've got O'Brien, who has already lived the good life.
Right.
But they didn't do that. They tried to make us think of these guys as, just again, good, everyman who become buddies, and really kind of leaning into that kind of everyman charm that O'Brien has, with people and things like that. So I think that's why this one kind of comes off a bit muted in its
Yeah,
emotional
wait.
pulls. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're right. In that scene where, Bilby has to make the choice to kill someone, if they had added another element there to ratchet up like his reluctance at least to do it, maybe having someone else forcing him, guns on him to do it, make it so that it's not just seemingly on Bilby to make this decision, would
right,
have helped us a little bit more, to be like, to find a redeeming quality in him.
right.
But we're missing that, and I think that's ultimately why the episode does kind of fall flat, is because as much as they want us to believe that these two people, O'Brien and Bilby, really could be friends and have a close friendship and things like that, there's really nothing redeemable about Bilby. They try to give us this element of he's doing this to protect his family, but as we find out other things about the Orion Syndicate, we know that, you have to work really hard to get in with the Orions. They don't just come to you and select you and say you're in and take your family or whatever. Bilby was always trying to get in with them. He finally did, and now with the Orions, it's once you're in, you're in. There is no out.
Yeah,
So that's a whole different context and a way to frame this character that I think they were trying to skirt by in order to give us this other emotional connection, which just doesn't fully resonate.
right.
Um, Other than that, though, I still think it's an overall solid episode because I like the fact that it's such a far departure from the crisp cleanliness of Starfleet and the Federation. We're on this dark, kind of run down, backward planet,
Highly
Farius Prime,
mechanized. Yeah,
yeah. It's got this weird, almost a new age steampunkish feel to it. Whenever they're showing the scenery, everything's these deep browns, and you got the steam and the pollution and the whatever everywhere, and everybody's existing in the shadows. It seems to forever be dark. We never see a sunny day on
right.
this planet. The Federation contact is lurking in the shadows, which again, he stands out because he looks so clean. Even in the dirtiness of the place, he looks so clean. His hair's
Yeah,
all smoothed back. His suit is, nice and tailored. And standing next to O'Brien, who's playing this part, he definitely stands out. It's like even in the shadows, you look out of place.
right.
You would definitely be spotted.
Yeah.
So, and he comes across as a bit of a prick too. So it all works. It all checks out.
I'm sorry. Who comes out as the prick exactly? The
The
boss man.
the Federation's version of the CIA.
Oh,
Which
yes,
then
the
at the
contact.
end,
Yeah,
yes, and then at the end, when the Orion boss comes in and he's also all hair slicked back and
yeah.
polished, you would be forgiven for thinking those two weren't in collusion,
I
and
mean,
that,
I'll tell you. I mean, you've seen enough of these spy movies. I was half expecting the contact to be the traitor
right,
for some reason. He was going to betray O'Brien at some point, and he does emotionally, but not intellect or not realistically. The
yeah,
whole I don't really. He has it coming to him kind of attitude
yeah,
about the
he's
Bilby
very
character.
he's very anti any kind of saving or rehabilitation, which is not characteristic of Starfleet as we've come to understand it.
Right.
Starfleet seems to be, forever giving people second
Second,
chances
third,
and,
fourth
yeah,
chances. Yeah.
tries to get your life back together. And for him to be so callous and be like, nah, he's a criminal, we're done with him.
Well, and he's
Mm,
also callous toward O'Brien. He's basically like,
yeah,
"Oh, you got
s-
too deep with the guy."
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I mean, I forget all the lines he says, and that's supposed to be the point of the scene. Is he pisses O'Brien off enough that O'Brien wants to go back and try and save the guy? Part of me wishes that like it would have been more exciting if O'Brien had tried to like get be a part of the team that was going to make the assassination attempt and somehow try and sabotage it in a way that solved all the problems. Like
hmm
I don't know,
use
something like
those
that.
use those engineering skills to,
Right.
at the last minute everybody's beamed out or something.
Yeah, something. I mean, again, that would have made way more expensive for the episode as opposed to just people talking. Um, I guess that kind of is part of it. Is that the episode, in order to keep things inexpensive, because we're using a whole new sets, it would seem. I mean, everything is at least. I know it's on the soundstage. We've probably seen the soundstage before. We just don't know it.
Oh, I'm
But
100% convinced that a lot of these things we've probably seen before. I
hundred
know,
percent,
like
yeah,
as we've said many times before, and I've pointed out, the set for Deep Space Nine was one of the largest that Paramount ever put together, and so to maintain that set for as long as they did, that meant that several sections of it had to have been reused, and
it did.
I
Again,
have
yeah,
no doubt that what we were seeing is a redressing of like the
Quarks,
cargo bay setting or quarks or something like that, just some darker lighting, add in some smoke to get some haze,
right?
and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um
But the
yeah.
point being is, like, all this is technically new on some level.
Hmm.
There's some work been done, and so giving it an action-packed finale would have been just too much. But the ending of O'Brien going to him and revealing the truth, like, what was O'Brien expecting exactly? Like, I guess that comes down to it too. Is like character our lovable, optimistic characters try and do the right thing at the last minute, but without truly providing a solution other
Yeah,
than
that's
just do
true.
the right thing. Um,
Just come away, just leave.
yeah.
I'll hide you, but it's just like you're not taking anything into consideration as to what the situation is right now.
Well, what's the leverage the O Syndicate has on him? They have the family, and there's unless O'Brien can promise the family safety as well. And the whole idea is the Syndicate is an extremely effective organization that doesn't just let people leave. Once you're in, you're in. Yeah,
Now,
we're
let's
done.
not forget that this is not the first time that we've heard the Orion Syndicate. We know that in the episode The Ascent, Quark
Mhm.
was going to testify against some members of the Orion Syndicate, and they bombed the shuttle, which caused him and Odo to crash on that planet, where
Right,
they barely survived. So we do know that the Orion Syndicate does, take care of people who could potentially hurt their organization, or they
right.
at least try to. But that doesn't mean that they're always successful. As we know, Quark and Odo both lived, and as far as we know, the Orion Syndicate is giving Quark a wide berth. So, I mean, they make one attempt and then give up. Not really that scary of an organization. Sounds like if you can beat them one time, they're done with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the guy really didn't have a reason to not try.
My only theory
He was
about
just
Quark
scared.
is that he got his chance to testify later. That went south for whoever he testified against, but that was it. And so Quark is no longer a danger to anyone else in the syndicate. Like, he's done his damage, and therefore he's no longer worth the trouble.
I could
Um,
see that. That
yeah,
yeah, they took care of the threat another way. We couldn't get to Cork, but we eliminated the threat on the other end, so it doesn't matter what Cork knows or doesn't know.
right. Or that he did say something that got the guy thrown in jail, but that's literally all the damage he could have done, and now that's it.
Yeah.
Quark is
Okay.
truly no longer a threat to them, which is funny because we get the feeling that Quark does have his hand, at least in part, like a finger in every pie somewhere along the line. And
Hmm.
there's some other syndicate dude who's like, nope, that dude gotta go. But apparently not. Who knows? So,
Well, I would also point out this episode actually gives us, in my opinion, gives us an answer to another debate that we've had before in
yeah.
the who's the best engineer, Geordi or O'Brien. To me, this episode solves that with it being firmly Geordi. Never heard of the Enterprise falling apart whenever Geordi went on vacation or anything like that. But the whole station seems to stop functioning once O'Brien's away for any prolonged amount of time. And not only that, but none of his crews and repair teams can seem to keep the station working while he's gone. Another problem that Geordi never had, all of his staff was competently trained and keep the Enterprise running while he was gone for a couple of days or some weeks or whatever. So sounds to me like maybe O'Brien should have put down the beer and stopped throwing the darts and got back out there and trained some people because the station was in complete disarray.
Wait, you don't give him any points for the whole Cardassian Federation technology disunion being solved by O'Brien? Like,
No, I
no.
don't. And you know why? Because he's been on the station for 6 years. He should have had that problem knocked out by now. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. All right. So we have that question
Just
solved
saying.
now.
In my opinion, it's solved. Everything was breaking. Lights were flickering. The lift to the to ops didn't work all the
Yeah.
way. No, come on, come on.
Yeah. I love how when it pops up, Worf and Dax are on there and it goes like halfway up. And Worf, what does he say? He says, Major Kira, the turbo lift's not working. And she's like, I
She's like,
can
I
see
can see that.
it. uh, hilarious.
Oh, Worf,
What did
always stating the
what
obvious.
did Cisco say? I don't remember exactly what his lines were in this episode.
Well, so we see
Oh, I
him with
couldn't. I can't
Bashir.
tell you where he's gone. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
see him with Bashir, and Bashir's complaining about the stuff breaking, and O'Brien, not O'Brien, but Cisco calls him out, and he's like, "You're not here to complain. You're here because you're worried, and you want to know when the chief's going to be back. You want to know where he's going, and I
Randall.
can't
Yeah,
tell you." So,
it
yeah,
really is fun. The O'Brien Bashir friendship growth truly is the that's the
it's
true
great to
blossoming
see. Right?
relationship.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah, cute in its way. I don't know if I have
So,
much more to say on this episode,
yeah, I mean,
frankly.
there's really not much that we have to go over with this one. We've kind of done it because, like we said, they just didn't get there when it came to the emotional gravity that they wanted the episode to have.
Right,
It just didn't hit right. Had this been more of the father son dynamic, having this older man, because the way it reads, it's like this was going to be a much older man who was looking for that, the quintessential last score so he could retire and take care of his family and all that stuff. And to see O'Brien kind of fall into this son he never had role
mm,
would have made for a much stronger pull for us. But we don't get that. We don't get that.
right.
Well, yeah, as you say, there's really not much more we need to, say or do to break down this episode. Now, I
Yeah,
will just say really quick, I'm not going to fault the actor who plays Bilby for this. It's
yeah,
just a simple matter of the episode had already originally been written differently, and
mhm,
I feel like whenever you're trying to rewrite something, recast something, you lose something from that first bit. I mean, it's so much different from a like a proofread or an edit. You're doing a full-on rewrite. You're basically coming up with an all-new story. And in
right,
fact, there were several other stories that were pitched along the way that also were, high in contention before they finally decided on this one. So I can't imagine what that must have been like for the writers trying to put together the story and see which one works and which one's going to get greenlit. Then you got to cast it. Then one of your principal cast members dies. Now you got to go back and you got to rewrite and rework and find another actor and tool things to them, and you're on an intense deadline which your time's already cut short because you already started halfway on another project. And
right,
yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on here for this one that really, for what we ultimately get, for them to still come out of it with I'd say it's an okay, it's a solid episode. It's not, the it's not a oh my god kind of this is whatever. You can find things to enjoy about it, sure, but yeah, there were a lot of things here that could have been better, but for the time that they had, I think they gave us a good turnout. And there's a lot of other things, like I said, like the settings and dealing with the Orions and all that, which give us another element of the Trek universe to consider. They
right,
really haven't had to before,
right.
that I really like here. So
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a different type of episode. So we're seeing something different. We're not getting that polished, shiny version of Federation. Everything. How everything kind of goes. So yeah, it's different. I guess if they had, what do you think? Like if they had added more characters from our main cast as a part of the plot, like instead of it being just O'Brien, like O'Brien and Bashir have to infiltrate. Do you
um
think they could have maybe solved some problems or
no, I think that what we really needed was just greater immersion. Like I said, they're trying to make us care about these characters, and we just don't learn enough about them. So I really feel like we needed more of those elements so that we would want to watch want to develop along with this episode. Also, if we had learned more about the world that they're in and why it is so dire that it's kind of a sink or swim with the Orions beyond just this kind of one dimensional, if you don't do it, they'll kill you threat. Like, give us more on that. Maybe, show some interaction with Bilby and his family
Hmm.
and show him
Yeah.
like maybe he's doing this not just for the very general taking care of my family, but maybe somebody is sick, maybe the child is sick or the wife is sick or something, and there's a sense of urgency placed
Yeah.
on
Yep.
needing
Yep.
to do some of these things so that
Hmm.
then again some of what Bilby does can now be forgiven because maybe he's on a timeline. If he doesn't get this by this time, the son dies, the daughter dies, the wife dies. And not because they're being killed by the Orions, but because they have a debilitating illness. Just anything else that would add some more emotional context to the story
Right.
would have really helped here, and
Yeah.
we just don't have it.
Yeah. If there had been, I mean, I don't want to go too far to the cliches because I feel like while I agree with everything you just said, like that could have given emotional depth. There's always the problem in my mind of like so many stories have done stuff like that. That how do you make it unique? But ignore that. Just moving forward, if we had given like at no point do I feel like Bilby is truly doing what he's doing because he's desperate. Like
Right, that's
he's
what's missing. That is what's
yeah,
missing. It's the
like
desperation.
he's just a low level mid he's a low level crime bro,
Yeah,
and like he's laughing early on at the beginning of the episode. They're talking about, oh, we
yeah.
had we had the police pay for our dinner last night. Let's have this.
Yeah,
We'll
he's
hack.
enjoying it. He's enjoying himself. He
Yeah,
enjoys being this kind of criminal boss of this little group. He's king of his
right,
castle as it was. And that's what I'm saying. Like we lost so much when it comes to understanding that character.
right,
And so when they finally start to lay it on us about how important his family is to him, it rings us hollow
right,
because we did just watch him very much reveling in stealing, grifting, hurting others. He's laughing, he's joking. He's got prostitutes coming. He's
yeah,
living kind of this high life of
right,
influence in this underbelly here. And then all of a sudden, when things start to unravel a bit, now all of a sudden it's about family and they've got my family and all this stuff. We should have been hearing that from the beginning and seeing this person who is an otherwise good guy who's been pushed to his limit is now operating under intense constraints,
right,
maybe finding little pockets of enjoyment here and there, but it's all related back to the greater overarching theme of I'm doing this to get out, I'm
right,
doing this to finally live that better life I've been pursuing.
right,
Would have made this episode better. We just
right.
didn't have it. They kind of gave us things in reverse order, and it was too late.
Yeah.
Too late by that
Or
time.
maybe it'd have been fun if the idea of the episode was we've had an unknown contact in the syndicate that we need to get out. We promised him we'd get him out, but we're not exactly sure who he is. He's been feeding us great information for years, but now he's telling us that he needs out as soon as possible. His family's in danger, and so you're in there to figure out who he is and to extract him out. Like ah, that
Yeah,
is a
and
unique
then we
story.
don't.
I feel.
Yeah, that would have been a great story. You're right. And then we don't know who it is, and maybe we start to really like Bilby, and we're thinking it's him, and he's doing just enough, but it turns out he's the plant from the Orion Syndicate to find out the same thing, but
Yeah,
to kill him
yeah,
versus O'Brien being there to save him.
right,
So I would have liked that's another element there that could have been done
right.
to make us really like this episode more.
Yeah, yeah. I guess we're both getting at is there are other ways we could have made this story unique to the spy genre,
Yes.
but it's full of the cliches, and
And again, we
because
have to
they're the
always remember that
cliches,
it was the 90s. This was the
yeah,
90s.
yeah,
Like you said, Mission Impossible, all those movies were very popular,
right,
and everybody always, no matter what genre they're in, they all try to play into whatever is the cash grab at the time because it is a
right,
great way to get attention focused
yeah,
on your original product. Heck,
right,
even ER does it.
yeah,
They have episodes where there's a terrorist attack on the city, and someone's got to be the hero and do whatever, all those things. So
Right.
everybody does it. Every show has their version of this to get you to watch and pay attention. Be like, oh, this show's not that bad, or oh, this movie's not that bad. It reminds me of this, and then you want to watch more, and you get sucked in.
Right.
In theory.
Right.
Well, I think that is going to really do it for us on this particular episode. But I want to take the time to use this last about 15 or so minutes that we have to talk about something that we had mentioned last week, but that we're going to save for an After Dark episode. And we may even return to it when we get to the After Dark, but I just can't wait anymore.
Let's do it now.
It's not the After Dark. It's actually a part of it that I want to talk about, in which we were talking about the true use of the Enterprise D.
Mm,
As I had, I think I had told this story a little bit. I'll try to sum it up faster. Basically, I had watched this video that was talking about how the Enterprise D was actually not used for the original mission that it was intended for.
right.
And so, as we all know, the Enterprise D is the largest Federation ship in existence at this particular time. The Galaxy class is the largest. Um, Now, the story goes that the original mission for the Enterprise, or for the Galaxy class, was deep space exploration. It was supposed to launch, go into the farthest reaches of known space and beyond, and just really not come back. But it was supposed to be a part of a task force. It was going to be launched with several other support and capital ships with it, so that it could serve as literally the star base, or the city ship
Right.
among these others. So you would have these other ships that would go out from wherever they went, in deep space, and they would do all the various science and exploring and whatever. And then whenever they met, new people, new cultures and civilizations, they would bring them back to the city ship. And whoever was the captain or the commander of the city ship was basically like the admiral or the first minister, basically, um of this thriving city in space, what they were with their people.
Right.
And that was kind of going to be the mission. And then you would have your officers who would serve roles on the support ships, but then when it was time for them to take vacation and to relax or whatever, they would rotate out to the Galaxy class, which was full of multiple gyms and multiple state-of-the-art holodecks and arboretums, and having orchestra concerts, and get your hair cut and all this other kind of stuff, barber shops and salons. And basically, it was a very, again, city in space, very leisure. Schools were there. Everything that you needed for a thriving metropolis
Right.
to support its people. But story goes, this mission was later trashed because of the sudden reappearance of the Romulans and their massive ships, those Diderotix class, the big green bulbous ones that are kind of hollowed out in the middle,
Yeah.
those ships. So they wanted something that would be on par with that particular power class, and the only thing they had at the time for that was the Galaxy class. So after the launch and test run of the very first Galaxy class ship, all the others that were launched were intentionally positioned around, not too far from Starfleet headquarters, so that in
Right.
the event anything happened, they could get back rather quickly.
Right.
Also, later we see this is proven to be a smart decision, because the Borg become a threat. Now, I always put a little asterisk by the Borg, because, as we know, first initial contact with the Borg was because of Q, not because the Borg wandered into Federation space all of a sudden. Q forced that one, but
Right.
again, proved to be fortuitous, because it ramped up the production of other Galaxy class ships. So then
Right.
we basically had a whole fleet of them.
Right.
But with that all being said, and saying again, the original mission was to go into parts unknown with a task force. I wanted to kind of, not only talk about that, but also maybe pitch what our story would be if that had been the original mission.
Right.
It's the Enterprise with, let's say, four other ships,
Right.
and going out into space.
Right.
What do you think that particular setup would look like? What would that mission be?
Well, it's funny. So after we had pitched this last week, you and I, we got off and we kept talking a little bit, and I said to you, well, Battlestar Galactica, obviously. And you were like, yes, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I
part of the reason
a
I,
very Battlestar-esque theme
yes,
to it.
yeah. Well, so the reason I thought of Battlestar Galactica when you were talking about all that is when you said capital ship, because part of what goes on in Battlestar Galactica is not only is the Battlestar Galactica the like main ship, but it there is a quote unquote capital ship, the Paradise ship, basically, where all the the voting happens, and if you need
It
to
was literally
relax.
called Cloud 9 in the
Yes,
show.
exactly. So I was thinking of that because the way you were describing the Enterprise was like the ship where you could go relax. Basically, it was like kind of like a city amongst the other ships, and I thought that was an interesting idea because, like, if you were to go send a fleet of 5 ships out to do space exploration, yeah, it makes sense that there would be a central ship of sorts, the coordinating ship, the ship that, if everything else goes south, the other 4 are sacrificed to get this one home, and everyone, or puts on their life jacket, and everyone gets beamed aboard the one ship, and it might be tight for everyone to be on that ship for a while it returns back to safe space, but it could fit everyone in desperate needs.
Well, so
Um,
that was always one of the things that always stood out about the Enterprise. The Enterprise had a working crew of just over 1,000 people. But
right.
when you looked at the size and the compartments on the ship, that ship could hold like 5 or 6,000 people.
Well,
So it
and
was it was
and even
ridiculous.
well, you even say that, but there is an episode. It's the one where I think they go back and Tasha Yar is still alive, right? And they're in
Mhm.
this alternate universe where they're in military readiness all the
Mhm.
time, and the ship crew capacity has less. There are less people on the ship because it is a military ship straight up, as opposed to this hybrid. The spaceship as we know it is kind of a hybrid. It's a
Mhm.
diplomatic ship that can perform military feats when confronted. It's able to stand its ground. So yeah, if the idea was that the Enterprise D really does have the capacity to hold a really high level number of people, it's being used in some episodes as a diplomatic base. We have the diplomats coming on board with their retinues, if I'm saying that word right, or routine. What's that routine? Their entourage. Maybe that's the better word. You know, um, assume that you need every there's just some sort of massive group of people that needs to come somewhere, and that's the ship. So yeah, I think it would work. But the other thing I was thinking of is, Voyager is in some ways answering this question. I haven't watched Voyager, obviously, but that is part of their plot, is that they are
So
alone in space. They don't have a
yes,
fleet around them, but
it's definitely part of the plot, but we have to remember, and since you haven't seen Voyager, you're forgiven.
yeah, yeah, no, definitely.
Voyager was flung into the Delta Quadrant. It was never supposed to go there.
Right,
That was a catastrophic accident which killed a lot of the crew members. They had to become a blended crew in order to begin this long journey home. But if you take out the accidental part of it, that is very much what the Enterprise was designed for, to be this kind of deep space, far flung ship with really there's no need for it to return to Earth.
right,
There it was supposed to be able to be gone for, decades before finally having to make that trip back and offload people and rotate out and all the other
right,
kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, yes, if the show had been Captain Janeway on a Galaxy class ship being flung into the Delta Quadrant and then making their way back to Earth from the Delta Quadrant would have been a completely different show because they had things already built into a Galaxy class
right,
for long-term space flight. That was the whole point of Voyager. They weren't designed for it at all, and yet
right.
somehow, miraculously,
They have
they
to make
made
it
it.
work, and they do it.
Yes.
They make it. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I never watched the show, so I'm just yeah.
Oh, and
Um.
that's always a classic debate too. What would have happened if this crew had gone to the Delta Quadrant or whatever? My favorite is always if Cisco had been flung on the Defiant to the Delta Quadrant, he'd have been back the next week because because the moral battle that Janeway makes or has before she makes the decision that ultimately strands them there, Cisco would have had none of that. He'd be like, "Nope, get my people home."
Yeah.
and back, you know.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah,
So
that is definitely true. How do the captains react to different situations? Now, I think the real question about how would a show like this work would be, do you want to lean into the scientific exploration fun, we're just finding new planets and new scientific discoveries angle, or like would you have it at some point where like one of the ships blows up because of some sort of
yeah.
some force like the Borg shows up and it's antagonistic and they lose a ship, and is there
Oh
a
yeah.
coup at some point? Because like definitely Battlestar Galactica definitely had some of that kind of stuff.
Well, I don't think that, I mean, I can't say I don't think there would never be a coup, but I definitely think that we could see a situation where one of the ships was destroyed, and now that crew is having to reintegrate with all the other, be basically redistributed amongst all the remaining ships, and you find the majority of those people now on the Enterprise and trying to fit into that command structure. And maybe the captain of whatever ship it was that was destroyed is not so keen on the fact that where he was the captain of his own vessel, now he's serving as maybe third or fourth in command,
Right.
because they already had a command structure they're not going to get rid of just because this guy comes along.
Right.
And and to think that everybody that would be on who'd be serving in the command structure of the Enterprise would have to outrank the others on the other ships to make
Right.
everything else make sense. I mean,
Right.
there would become a level where they'd be interchangeable, but there would also be a certain level at the top that was just they would have to be um they would have to outrank everyone else just so that the chain of command could survive in the event things like that happened.
Right.
So yeah, it would just there that constant bit of tension and pushback would always be interesting to see, and like who breaks, or maybe we could see another, like after one ship is destroyed, another ship is like, your leadership sucks. We're gonna go off on our own. We're gonna take our chances, and
Right.
we have that could be the mutiny of sorts. It's not that we're trying to take over, but we want to break away. We want
Right.
to do our own thing.
Right.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
see that.
That would all be really interesting. Yeah, you have like an admiral, and he has like say five captains under him. You know, the admiral is on the main ship, obviously the Enterprise, but the captain is in some ways kind of neutered because of that. The admiral always says where they're going. Um, so does that mean that captain is kind of lower somehow? Is he just kind of the number one in a sense? And then yeah, what happens if the other captains on their ships disagree, um, or even maybe not just disagree? Let's say one of them makes some sort of bad play
Yeah, it makes a real bad call,
and gets demoted because of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff.
And that one would be really interesting because, as we know, the captains have all had a tendency to play it fast and loose with certain rules.
Right.
The prime directive being one of them,
Right.
and they've typically gotten away with it because they are by themselves and they're in these distant parts of space. And by the time the ultimate ramifications of them breaking, bending, whatever such rule it was that they did, it seems like the ends justified the means. But in this situation, they would have to instantly answer for it
Right.
because their chain of command is right there. So
Right.
there's no waiting for the report to travel however long through subspace to hear back and see the results and all that. No, no, no. You have to report yourself to the admiral or whomever right then.
Right.
So yeah, it would be so. I would love to see that show.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. Different take. Um, I think you would definitely start with that more lighthearted tone and then ramp it up to the more, yeah, we got a
Oh yeah,
threat coming
oh yeah.
up and we're
It would
alone out
definitely be
here.
a yeah, definitely be a sweetness and light moment, or moments.
Right.
And then probably by the time you're really getting into seasons like 2 and 3, because by this time, hopefully, we would have learned about our various crews and the differences between the ships and what their specialties are, and now we're starting to see, conflicts arising through meeting other people or differences of opinion on how to like perform whatever
Right.
research or who's going on what away team or all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that would all be an interesting thing to play out over time, and then just to see like the ending be that you left with 6 ships, you came back with 2.
Yeah.
What happened?
Right.
Where did you go? And,
Yeah.
how and now because now that command structure has to answer for those supreme losses.
Right. Well, that would be fun. Like, let's say they have to drag one of them behind them with the gravity tether. We got one ship down and one ship tethered and one ship crash landed somewhere. Um, assume like even I assume that on Voyager they meet civilizations that help them like rebuild the ship if it's been damaged and help.
Oh, no. Mm-mm. No,
Really? No,
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 because
not at
see,
all.
that was also part of the problem with Voyager. Like, Voyager would go through these times when it would get badly damaged and beat up and barely survive, and then the next week, everybody's fine, and the ship is fine, and they only did it once. They only like, there's an episode called Year of Hell, and it's a two-parter, and it spans like, even in the episode, they do several little time jumps, 2 weeks later, 10 days later, 191 days, whatever, they do
Right.
all that. And we see this badly damaged, almost broken Voyager limping through space. But it's one of like the greatest episodes of the show because it's like it
Right.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
then even that episode does a colossal reset at the end of the two-parter, and literally, I mean, literally slamming the reset button, the ship rams itself into the thing, causing all the problems, which it causes a massive reset, and they're back to normal, and not even just back to normal, they're back to before all the stuff we just watched ever happened.
Oh,
So it
like
made
time
everything.
wise too.
Yes.
Ah,
So it wiped everything, every
it
bit of
undoes
character
all the.
development, all
Ah,
the emotional stuff
bummer.
that you saw, all the is gone. It's wiped. It never happened. And it's never sat well with me, but it's
Right.
what I always think. I was like, what a way to really like mess with your people. But yeah, but that's quintessential Voyager though. Like, every week they seem to be fine. We hear them talk about energy problems and conservation, and we see them do certain things like, instead of relying on the replicators for all their meals, they hire the worst alien ever to be their cook, which makes no sense. But we're not gonna anyway. To be their cook and to forage for local, foodstuffs and whatever else to prepare for them. Um, yeah, but then that's it. That's like, okay, okay. So we're growing our own vegetables. Problem solved. Energy problems solved. We have fresh, crisp uniforms every day. Captain's drinking her coffee every day. All the lights are on. No one's in power save mode for shit. Just everything's everything's on. Our doors are still automatic because no one wants to turn a doorknob or slide a handle or nothing. No, no, no power conservation whatsoever, unless that episode that week demanded it, and we would see
Right.
like a couple of those every so often. So no, um, and that was the mistake of Voyager. It definitely should have had more of a long-term survival mode feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Neelix is Star Trek's Jar Jar Binks. Yeah, that's one way to look at him. I say you're still giving him too much credit. Um, David, for your just quick edification, Neelix is a alien named called the Talaxian that is
Yeah.
native to the Delta Quadrant, and
Right.
he comes aboard Voyager, and he's the one they make their cook. Now, initially, I would have been okay with him being the one that like points to planets where known food sources are, but there's absolutely no reason for that person to then be cooking and preparing those things for them to eat. He doesn't know any of those aliens' dietary requirements. He doesn't know anything about how their food needs to be prepared, seasoned, nothing. And they're going to just trust him to make something and give it to him. And then it's going to, the fact that that crew didn't suffer all kinds of gastrointestinal distress or die outright is astounding. And
Yeah.
when they did bring it up, the few times they brought it up, they always tried to make it seem like the human or the Vulcan character experiencing the discomfort was the weak one. It was like a
Yeah.
joke. Oh, you can't handle the spicy whatever. No, he just tried to poison them. He needs to go to the brig. Like, that's how that should have been taken.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It reminds me of that scene in Galaxy Quest when they are all sat down to eat their culturally relevant foods, and
Yes.
um, the character.
Alan
Oh,
Rickman. Alan Rickman's
yes,
character gets that
that's
bowl
the
full of
bugs.
yeah, and the
Yeah,
slimy stuff.
and he's like, "Thanks a lot." I forgot what how he says it. His deadpan in that movie is hilarious. Um, yeah, and then again, oh gosh, the other guy,
Alan Rickman,
not Rickman, but
Tim Allen.
Tim Allen. I knew there was an A in there. Tim Allen's got a perfectly cooked steak, and that's the whole point of the whole movie is that Rickman's character is mad because he's the professional, and Allen's character is the guy who just takes everything so casually, and yet he's got the
Everybody
steak.
loves
And
him. Everybody
yeah,
loves him.
yeah,
He's the hack.
yeah.
Rickman's character is classically
We
trained,
have
and
to
yeah.
do an after dark about that movie at some
Oh,
point.
we
Oh,
will because it's one of the few movies that while uh, it's not necessarily a parody of Trek, it's seen as
yeah,
more of a love story to
yeah,
Trek.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Trek fans adore that movie.
yes,
Um, every Star Trek actor who's watched it has
loves
loved
it.
that movie and
Yeah,
given it a thumbs up. My favorite story of that is Jonathan Frakes went and saw it
yeah,
first,
uh-huh.
and he loved it, and he
Right,
told Patrick Stewart to go watch it, and Patrick Stewart was like, "No, I'm not gonna do it," because he thought they were making fun of Trek, and in particular, he thought they were making fun of him,
right,
and so he didn't want to watch it. But then he finally did, and
right.
he said he laughed so hard, he
Yes,
loved it, he loved the
yeah,
movie, and
yeah,
every Star Trek actor who has said anything about that movie has done nothing but give it warm praise and
yeah.
reviews, and
It
it's
really
just
is a
like
love story.
it
And again,
is.
I watched that movie so many times before we ever sat down and started doing this show, and I knew like it was such a good movie. It could you didn't have to be a Star Trek fan to
Yeah,
appreciate what it was
yeah.
doing, and still as a Star Trek fan now can still appreciate it. So brilliant.
I like telling people who aren't necessarily sci-fi fans or especially not Star Trek fans to watch that movie because to me it also embodies like the fan base and like
Yes.
why
Oh,
the shows
100%.
become so important.
Yes.
You know, like this guy, this the kid in the movie. You know, the way he's got his friends and the connection and the
Yeah.
community and how everybody is all willing to come together to help out and believe and do this stuff. It's like that that's it. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Like I love that more than anything. And it's one of the things that I feel like is missing a lot in fandom today because now everything has become so incredibly tinged with the political implication of whatever
Right.
the episode was or the actor who played the part or who did the and I'm just like, "Oh my god, like I
Yeah.
don't want any of that. I just want to enjoy the show."
Right.
You know, and it's just there are times when it is important to talk about the message of the episode.
Right.
But then there are also times when you just need to sit back, shut up, and watch and enjoy
Yeah.
the thing for what it
And
is.
take it not as seriously as yeah,
Yes.
everything else in life. Because the whole point of entertainment of escapism is to escape.
Yes. To let it go for just an hour. Is
Yeah.
that okay? Can I not have to worry about whatever the situation is right now
Yeah.
or what guest star you have in whatever role. I don't care what their political affiliation is. I care, did they get the thing right in the episode? You know,
Right.
did they hold the phaser right? Because that's
Right.
what I'm really critiquing here. All
Right.
right. I don't care that you got President O'Malley from wherever, who's the king of the IRA. I'm worried that his comm badge is on upside down and no one fixed it. Like,
Yeah.
why did that happen? You know, those are
Yeah.
the things I'm looking at.
Yeah.
But man, it's just we move so far away from all that sometimes, and it's just like let's argue this for no reason.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Ah,
Yeah.
such a brilliant movie. Ah,
Well, and we've got so many other movies, and we got the Trek movies too, and then we got some other shows. We're obviously making our way through The Expanse.
right.
When we finally get done with our review of Deep Space Nine, we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do next, unless you want to be done. What do you? I'm gonna ask you now, even though we still have a season and a half to do. Are you tired of doing the show, David? Do you feel like you're ready
No,
to
not yet.
come to an end and retire?
No, I'm ready to tackle this all the way to the end. So actually, you mentioned I'm just thinking about it. Like, what is next on the list of movies? Is it Nemesis? Is that the one that's next for me to watch?
Um, yeah, because you watched First Contact, right?
Yeah, we've watched First
Oh no,
Contact.
so you need Insurrection. Insurrection is next in the
Okay.
movies. You need to watch
Okay.
Insurrection.
Should
You
right?
could watch it now.
Like, do I need? Okay.
Yeah, you can watch it now.
I don't want to. I don't want to. Like, well, I guess let's see. This episode we just
Well,
talked about came out
let's
in
save it until
February. Well, it came out in February
I was gonna
'98.
say let's save
So
it for
we're
save it for
talking over
the
each other
end
now.
of season 6. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. End of season 6. End of season 6. We can do that. We can do that.
Yeah, that will make more sense because I'm not that there's anything in that movie that directly relates to it, but I think for the sake of just the characters in general, it'll be better for you if you wait.
Okay.
So, yeah, that'll work.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Fantastic. Um, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, before the end of the S9. So I agree. Yeah, end of season 6. I mean, if you really wanted to stretch, you could probably wait until the middle of season 7, but that's not necessary because the movie itself doesn't really relate a whole lot to the Dominion War or anything like that. So yeah, end of
Okay.
season 6 to the middle of season 7. Anywhere in between there, you can watch it.
Gotcha.
Then
I'm gonna do that.
then you can watch Nemesis whenever you want, and that'll be the last TNG movie. Even though they did kind of leave it open for another one, but that's not going to happen. They're not going to do another movie with that cast.
Yeah.
Not at
Well,
all.
now that they've done the Picard show, right?
Yeah,
And the
that was their send off. They're done. I know a lot of people are hoping for them to return in some other capacity. They're not going to. The hopes right now, the Star Trek Section 31 movie is supposed to be released in 2025, so stay on the lookout for that. Strange New Worlds returns next year as well. Lower Decks returns in just 4 short days. October 24th will be the first episode. So, stay on the lookout for that. Um, Prodigy, I believe, is done. And then they're still in the works on the Starfleet Academy show. No official release date for that one yet.
Gotcha.
And yes, as our guest in our comments here says, you can skip Nemesis. You know, you can only catch 22. You can only skip Nemesis if you've watched Nemesis. Other than that, you have to watch it. So
I have to say, the one reason I do want to watch Nemesis is because I know that what's his name?
Tom
The
Hardy,
Tom Hardy's in it. Yeah, Tom Hardy
it's
is, you know,
a very young, very sweet
yeah,
Tom Hardy.
exactly. Right. And it's really interesting because Tom Hardy, the first thing I know him from, like the earliest thing I know him from is one of the later episodes of the Band of Brothers TV show. He
Hmm.
briefly shows up and actually dies. I think it's episode 9. Like he dies in the very episode he shows up, but he's so young. He's like this skinny looking dude. He's not Tom Hardy as you might think of him now. So part of me wants to watch Nemesis just to see a young Tom Hardy and see how,
He's he's come so far.
yeah, what's changed. So
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. I think that is really going to do it for us on this episode. Again, you can find us and follow us anywhere you happen to do your various social medias. And actually, you know what? I'm going to stop saying that because it's not true. You can find us on Facebook if you really want to find us and contact us for anything. Just we don't use X anymore. It's become a hodgepodge of crazy, and nothing really works anymore. And I'm just tired of fooling with it and trying to get them to work with me to get our stuff released like it used to be. So I've given up. Otherwise, we are on Facebook still. So and then of course YouTube. You can leave us comments and stuff there as well. So Facebook, YouTube, send it to us. We'd be more than happy to hear from you and answer any questions, comments, concerns you have. Just remember, as always, be polite. Otherwise, we won't answer you at all. We'll block you. It's fun. Other than that, guys, you can also listen to us anywhere you happen to listen to your podcast. I happen to do it on Spotify. Yes, I listen to myself on Spotify. I love my voice that much. So go ahead, tune in, and tell us what you think. But until next week, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.